Awesome. So happy to have you back here with us. I hope you stick around. These shows have been wonderful, whether it's with the expert interviews that I'm doing like today or with our author panels. There's so much good information in here for would-be writers, for authors who want to revitalize their books. You'll find all of the shows at bizbookpublishinghub.com, plus lots of other resources for authors and writers. But first, let me just dig in here and introduce you to this week's guest. I'm pleased to interview one of our BizBook Publishing Hub's founding partners. Our hub partners are experts who support entrepreneurs along their author journey. Before we dive in, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Today's guest is a pioneering force in media relations. She founded Conscious Media Relations, an agency dedicated to transforming the media landscape for authors and speakers in the mind, body, spirit, and self-help sectors. With over 35 years of experience, she's expertly paired countless authors, speakers, and coaches with thousands of podcasts and radio hosts seeking transformative voices in personal development and more. After becoming an author, she recognized the need for focused media relations that bridge the gap between transformational and mainstream media. Her agency specializes in helping those whose books improve lives, businesses, and the planet. Offering done for you and done with you podcast and radio tours introduce authors to 9,000 shows at once, guaranteeing a minimum of 30 invitations. Her impressive background includes a successful PR campaign for high-profile clients such as Toyota, Disney, and the World Poker Tour, showcasing her creative and effective marketing strategies. She has booked more than 10,000 interviews for her clients and garnered more than 90 raving testimonials for her podcast and radio tours. Please join me in welcoming Jackie Lapin. Welcome, Jackie.
Robbie, it's great to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You've done a lot. This is the part of the interview where I get to ask you more about that, because I know you as this, professional who works with authors in various ways. And I want to know more about how you came to provide those services. What's the journey that took you to this point?
Well, you have to go back actually to the point when I was 11 years old. At 11 years old, I wanted something special that was just about me. And I loved the Dodgers and I loved writing. And at 11, I decided I was going to be a sports writer. Now, we're talking a long time ago. There were no women sports writers. And I committed myself to reading the Los Angeles Times every single morning. And I went on to then really, I went to USC, which had the best sports teams in the world, the best journalism school in the Western United States. And in 1972, I won the baseball writer scholarship. Now, there were no women who'd ever applied for it, nor won it. And the next thing you knew, I not only won it and received my award in front of the Dodgers and the Angels at a major banquet, but then went on to work for the Detroit Free Press, the Associated Press, be on the front pages of the Los Angeles Times, co-hosting Dodger Dugout, and as was at the Washington Post before I was 22 years old. And so coming home from the Post, I, was a freelance writer. I did a number of things, but ultimately I started my own PR agency specializing in sports, special events, and cable television that became one of the two largest in the United States. My world-class client list included, like you said, Toyota Motorsports, the National Hockey League, the Golf Channel, Showtime, Top Rank Boxing, Ice Capades, Harlem Globetrotters, World Poker Tour. I can go on and on and on and on. But somewhere toward the end of that, I was called to write 2 books. And I've been reading a lot in the personal growth space, and I realized that there was something really important about how we can control our own energy to create the world that we want to live in. And so I was writing about practical conscious creation. My second book was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show. And by the time I'd written 2, and the PR business was getting really funky in terms of big agents coming in on top of the smaller agencies, et cetera. But by that point, I realized that my heart lay with the people who are making the world a better place. That was me. That was my the people I love to work with and be with. And so I rebranded the company Conscious Media Relations. And I began focusing just on the people. But how I got the link between those two was in promoting my own books. There were no publicists that were actually doing anything more than broadcast radio. That was the thing in that day. But I realized that there was this burgeoning area of internet radio that nobody was touching. So I hired a bunch of guys in India to data mine all of the internet radio shows that were in my space. And so by the time you got done with the broadcast and the internet, I had 750 shows. That was unheard of in that era. And so that's how I ended up doing over 100 interviews. And then, of course, as podcasts came on, we started adding podcasts, which is how we now have a database of 9,000 podcasts. And we have continued to build that. But when I did this for myself, I thought, ooh, this would be of value to other people, not just me. And that's when when I rebranded the company, that was the core. In the early days, we did complete book campaigns. But in my experience today, the broadcast media doesn't really care much about personal growth and spirituality and health and wellness and a lot of this other stuff unless it's really mainstream. So I stopped doing the things that weren't producing and just focused on anything having to do with the audio, podcasts and radio. And of course, podcasts today are, 60, 75% of them are now visual as well as audio. But anything within that space, we now serve and connect our authors to. So that's how we got to be where we are. And we're the unique specialist in our industry because nobody has built the kind of database that we have. Yes, and we do other things related, but, if you want to do it fast, we're about the easiest way to do that.
Jackie, I love that you started this at age 11, this story, because, my old show On the Schmooze, I would ask about people's sort of leadership journey. And I always guided them to go back really far because I'm always curious what people were like as a kid. And so you're this sort of tenacious 11-year-old who has a passion for sports, has a passion for writing, even though it's never been done before. Someone, of your gender has never applied themselves this way. That doesn't dissuade you. That says a lot about who you are and how I see you today. Even though I didn't know that story, that same tenacity shows up here. Your commitment to the justice work that you want to do. You want people to be seen. You want their stuff to be put out into the world, to communities that will most be excited about it and take action because of it. That whole story of how you built the initial PR company and all the skills you had before age 22 is really impressive. And it sort of shows the arc of the work that you've been doing. I know that you're really committed to a particular audience, and a lot of those folks are also building businesses. They're it's not that they're hiring you to get on radio tours and podcast tours just for the nice thing of it. Like it's not an inexpensive effort. So usually they have particular outcomes they're aiming for. Tell us a little bit more about the kinds of problems you solve for these authors. Like, what do they, well, for one, what do they think they're coming to you for? And what else are you able to show them you can do that they don't even know to ask for?
Well, the most important thing, let's just look at it from an overview. When a client comes to us, we say, okay, if you just want to market your book, we'll do that for you. But we really think that you should have 3 different things when you're out on these radio shows. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting some of the time. And one of those is obviously market your book. The second is have a free gift to give away to fill your opt-in list. And the third is, where are you taking them next? Is it an e-course? Is it a mastermind? Is it a private coaching? Whatever it is that you're going to bring them to that's going to enlighten their lives further and bring you revenue, that needs to be presaged in what you're also doing on those interviews. This is a 3-part process that is really highly designed to prosper yourself and prosper your listener. And of course, the host by doing that. So the problem that we solve is an author who says, one, I'm launching a book and I really want to get out quickly and easily to my audience in a wide way. I don't have the time to do it myself. Um, I've tried it, or I've had another agency and they're doing it little bit by little bit by little bit, or I didn't get results, or I want to revitalize a book that's been sitting and not moving. I need to get word out because otherwise it's just not going to get seen. Now, the other thing is a lot of people have a really heartfelt desire to change lives. And whether they're just, if that's the point of their book and that's all they want to do, it's still the only way to make sure that you're going to get out there. And the other forms of publicity, as I was saying, are really kind of iffy today. But with podcasts and radio shows, and still internet radio, do not overlook that. There is a waiting audience, and these people are hungry for content. And the fact that there are 4.2 million podcasts today, if somebody says to me, well, I can't find anybody that wants me, tells me that either they're not doing it very well, or they're going to the wrong audience, or they're just not trying very hard.
Mm-hmm.
There's an audience out there for you.
The piece you were saying about making sure they have those three pieces, they know, obviously want to market the book, but they have some sort of lead magnet to build their opt-in email list, and that they have an idea of where they're driving that traffic to over time. How is that pipeline being built, and where is it going? That's one of the reasons I was really keen to build the BizBook Publishing Hub, because it feels like entrepreneurs who are writing books to help them grow their business have unique challenges that other authors may not, because they really have to figure this out, because they could put a lot of money into a PR tour of whatever kind and be driving traffic, to an Amazon sales page that has no clear sales. It's ranking really poorly. No reviews or very few reviews. And just it's basically not a page that's converting. Right. It's like never a good idea to drive traffic to a page that's not converting, which is a piece I focus on, right? Is the launch piece with the reviews. But I feel like the other part of this is knowing why you're going to these audiences, and are you going to the right audiences? Because while there are all these millions of podcasts, there's a ton of business podcasts, for instance, and the books that you're talking about, that may not be the right audience. So I find that's partly why your list is so great, is you can get them in front of the audiences that would really be interested in their book. So I love that you're asking these questions. I have talked people out of hiring me because they weren't ready for the next step. Because it's just ethically doesn't feel right to just take money. And I know there are people out there that are doing that, but the people in the hub, I feel like, what I did while I was meeting with each of them is to understand their business practice. So the thing you were just describing there, you're educating people. And yes, they might want to say like, well, I'm just going to give you money. You're like, but do you want to be prepared? There's so much more that could be done here, which is why I articulated the difference between the problem they think you need help with and what you actually offer them. Do you have any particular stories of how people have been supported through you, like some outcomes that they've gotten?
I do, but I want to also make one point. We don't just do personal growth. We do kind of extended things, like if it's business with that is something like a heart-based business, and it teaches people something, but not how to sell more real estate. And then, we've got all kinds of extended subject matters. We have 40 different lists based on subject matter. So those go into the mix when we do this as well. So we're not that narrowly niched. We cast a wider net, but like you, I won't take people's money if it's not something that I somebody just asked me, would I do a retrospective book on the Vietnam War? No, it's too far out of our area. It's too newsy. So I won't take people's money like you for the same reason. So now your question about stories, one of my favorite is a guy named Gary Salyer, who's a relationship coach. And Gary he has a PhD, and has written a book that was really different and unique. And and by the way, how we do this is I read the book and write the pitch. It's not like hand me a letter and I'll send it. So I have to pull the essence out of it. And what's I say that I capture your message, your mission, your soul in a page and a half. And so it went out, and Gary says that he talked to between 3 and 5 million people. He sold a ton of books, and more importantly, it filled his client list. And even a year later, it was still generating clients for him because of the fact that people were listening to that podcast later on. So that's one of my favorites. And we get anywhere from 30 to sometimes 50 or 60. We just did one for a gal named Brandy Gilmore, who has a health and a mind body spirit, a mind body healing book, and we got 75 interviews for her because it was unique and she's powerful and she's well known. And and I could show her TEDx, which was really astonishing when she gets out of the wheelchair. And so it influenced people to say yes. So it just depends on the subject matter. A lot of things people will come to me and say, well, this may be foreign to you, but I channel. And I go, no, 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 you don't understand. I speak that language. And so a lot of times people come to me just simply because they're not talking to somebody who's skeptical, who doesn't understand, who doesn't live in this world. And so we have tons of stories about people who couldn't make it on the other side with mainstream PR companies, but came over to us because we understand the niche, and then got some great results.
I hired a company to help me get on some big name shows for my second book. And I don't recall them asking me any questions about my goals other than getting on these 30 shows, which was what the contract was for. And I would not guess that they read my book the way you just described. The letter was a good letter, but also nothing that, meaning they were good writers on her team. It was much, I mean, I get a lot of pitches as a podcast host, so I have a judgment just basically on those kinds of letters. But it didn't feel like they had added, like you're describing, like I'm pulling the essence of the book out. So sometimes even when I'm very happy with the results I got, but I'm now realizing how much more somebody who's aligned with that book. This is why it is a mismatch if a book about healing is going to a mainstream PR company. Like there's a mismatch. It's one of the reasons my virtual assistant's great, because she likes the work that I do. She likes my shows, so she wants to listen to them, right, and pull those show notes out. So I think it's important to match up your service providers, and that they should be ideally part of your target audience, or someone who could be a referral partner who understands your market, because then there's so much added value that you're able to offer somebody who may have, like you said, felt like this isn't going to work for me because I've tried elsewhere. And doing it on their own, yes, it's kind of possible to do. But also, again, as a podcast host, I've received some really bad pitches that people have sent to me as individuals, and it's endearing sometimes just how off the mark they are. What do you think actually makes a good pitch? I'm kind of
You're going
curious.
right where I wanted to go to.
I wanted to go there because I have all these examples in my head right now of bad pitches. So maybe we should talk for a minute about what breaks through the noise. Because I mean, part of it, you've got volume on your side because you've got so many shows you could send something out to, but still you've got to get past their inbox. And yeah, I know on the other side that that's really hard to do. So what are some of the ways you're able to hone those pitches?
So here's the most important thing: don't be boring. And some people come to me with books that are fairly repetitive of what else is out there. And you have to find what's unique and different, because otherwise, you're right, it's not going to cut through the clutter. So sometimes it's the subject matter. Somebody is doing something really unique. For example, I had a client who wrote a book called The Narctionary. And it's really about all the definitions of how narcissistic abusers can gaslight their partners. And so the subject matter itself was really compelling. But sometimes it's the hero's journey. Now, in that particular case, I could hit it from both sides because she had her own hero's journey of how she got there, But I just had, I have a client whose book is, is not particularly unique, but his story is, and he went from a guidance counselor telling him that he was a loser and he'd never go anywhere to running 6 incredibly huge successful businesses simultaneously. But how he had to go through the changes personally to rid himself of a lot of very bad habits and thinking and attitudes. And now he's coaching people on how to do that. So you have to look at whether it's the story, whether it's the content, whether it's a hero's journey, whether it's whether it's some other unique aspect of what this book or person brings to the table. Are they doing something that nobody else in the categories? Okay, I'll give you another one. I have a girlfriend we're doing a tour for right now, and she calls herself the Food Oracle. And what she does is she helps people find the vibrations in the food that will heal them or make them healthier. And she even has an oracle deck. And so, how many other people can position themselves that way? So, you're always looking for what's different. And then you write the pitch to that. And I'll give
Uh,
you, let me tell you, there's a formula to
sure.
the pitch too.
Oh, go for
The
it.
formula to the pitch is, what is the hook? What is the background of this person that makes them the expert that they are? And then the third part of it is more information about what's going to happen in the interview, whether that's bullet points of what the audience is going to learn or more detail about what's going to be presented. And so those three, that trilogy of information comes into a solid pitch.
I am already envisioning the takeaways that we're going to create from this interview, and that's a solid one right there. Because I think a lot of people who are, again, sometimes you start out doing these things on your own, right? At first, you got to venture one way or the other before you learn to hire professionals. And even when you're hiring professionals, I think it's important to be an educated consumer who understands the outcome that you should be looking for when you hire somebody. So, knowing in the conversation about getting started, really asking more probing questions about that to see what that person's value is that they can add, or how are they going to support you in this process. It is a very noisy market. There are, like you said, millions of podcast hosts. Not all have guests. Not all are current. Not all produce more than one episode a month. And finding the right audience makes such a difference. For some of my books, I've tracked the lead magnet back to the shows. And it's really interesting to see, there's plenty where there's no opt-ins. And I say yes to everybody because I'm not too worried about size of audience, because I just need one person to be interested, and that could make the whole thing worthwhile. But then suddenly there'll be another one that'll be like 200 plus, in the first few days. And you're like, whoa. And some of its size of audience makes a difference. But the audience alignment was always the factor to pay most attention to. And if I needed to really reserve my time, I would have to be more selective about which shows I said yes to. How have you helped authors decide whether a show was worth their time? And is audience size even a factor? Is it really about the alignment of the subject matter with the audience? What are other things that a person who's thinking about guesting, what should they be asking about to know if this is a good show for them? Assuming they interview people and they're currently doing shows.
Well, it depends. Obviously, if you're going out individually and doing it yourself, there are certain criteria that you just mentioned. To make sure they have a guest, make sure they're obviously speaking to your target audience. If size matters, yes, you can look at size. And also, how many shows they have done. So, that they're consistent and ongoing. And sometimes it's a factor of, do you know someone? And that's the low hanging fruit for you. and asking other people who they know that can introduce you. So that's a really good factor.
You
Um,
know, when I do book launch forums, when people are signing up to join the book launch teams that I run for myself or for my authors, one of the top questions is, well, the first question is, why do you want to support this book launch? Because I think it gives the author a little pep in their step to hear those responses in a moment when they're getting ready to do the marketing. But then another question is, I love sharing knowledge, and I'm really excited to share this as a guest expert on interviews or lives or radio. Like, who do you know that has a show, and that you'd be willing to make an introduction? And I mean, for my own sake, I got probably 24 or 30, I think it was close to 30 shows. A lot of them were quick lives, but those coupled with the ones I paid for, which were these big shows, it just got me a lot of visibility on LinkedIn, particularly because a lot of them were lives. And you never know who knows somebody. So you have to ask them, because some of them were introductions to larger shows that I wouldn't have thought to go to. But because of the introduction, I was able to both get in, but also I know as someone who's been running a show a long time, I mean, if I said yes to you today, you'd book 2 to 6 weeks from now, and your show would come out about 2 months later. So if you know somebody and you're trying to get them to move that date of your publication a little earlier, they'll work with you. So that's where those introductions can also be helpful. What have
well,
you what have
I
you been
want
able to do? Go ahead.
I also want to address the issue of size.
Yeah.
And you can be a size snob, if you're really limited on your time. But you know something? Medium sized shows and even smaller shows can hit the right person. That's
Hmm.
the person that needs you. So I believe that, if you have the available time, don't just go after the big shows. Go after, and by the way, those are a lot harder to book. Go after shows that just are in your genre. They might just have the right people that are going to go straight into your client list. You never know who's listening.
Before we were all on Zoom all day, I would tell clients, would you be happy if 12 people would be in your living room right now, um, having conversations about that topic and engaging with you? And the answer was always, oh my God, sure. I'd love, if it was 12 people and they were really into it. So that's how I would argue with them. Like, well, then why not just do any show? like,
Yeah.
like 12 people are listening, right? Like if they're into that topic, and they're listening to that show, and you've got the right lead magnet to offer them, right, to commit them to go from listening to being a subscriber, and then you have a good welcome series that introduces yourself, and then you offer them some other piece of value. I mean, this is our job, is to bring that person down into our world. It's not magic. And there is a little tension around how to convert people from listening to taking action, because they are often multitasking. What have been some of the tips you've been able to help your authors do to help people move? And part of it might be designing a really good lead magnet and making the link really easy to remember, or something like that. But when they're at the gym or they're driving and they're listening to a podcast, how are you able to inspire them listeners to take the action that will actually get them on the subscriber list?
Well, the first thing is you mentioned simple, easy URL. It might be your website / one word, or go out and buy an individual URL, a designated line, a word or 2 words that you can use as the lead magnet. We had when I was running Speakertunity, we had something called the relevant strategy sheet. That was a URL. It said what it was, go get it. So that's one way, making it easy on the memory. But the other thing too is what we tell our clients is, and what we do when I'm doing a podcast radio tour, I do a full media kit for them. Um, excuse me. And that media kit includes a few things. The main release is the pitch repurposed to say what this is the topic we're speaking on. Then a full bio of the author so that the host knows who you are. They get a real sense of you. Then a short on-air introduction that the host reads so that it sets up the interview. Then 20 questions you want to be asked. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And then what we call the learn more page, which is in bullet point, how the public can engage with you. So it's your book, it's your free gift, your opt-ins, your upsells, and then your social media and your website. Now, let's go back to those questions. Those questions are a roadmap, and they are designed specifically to take the reader, the listener, where you want them to go. It is basically a subtle call to action. So you build into that conversation. Well, in this question, you're going to drop your free opt-in, and in this conversation, the host is going to ask you about how people can, take advantage of your coaching program. And in this question, you're going to ask them, how do people contact you? So and it isn't necessarily that overt, but it opens the door for you to insert those things. So the questions are built in such a way that it creates the momentum to encourage the listener to take action.
I also feel like a good interview goes a long way towards this happening at the end. First of all, they're more likely to stay to hear the call to action link, which is hopefully easy to remember. I've been on shows as a guest where I've got great interviewers, and I've been on shows where they literally just go, "Thank you. My next question is," right? And what you're saying is, even if you don't have a great host, even if they're just kind of rote reading the question, if you provide them with these 20 questions that really guide the conversation to the points you most want to make, that that alone could make it a much better interview. And then for the listeners will stay with you to the end and want to know more. I also wonder what your thoughts are about how much people should give away on these shows, because I know that sometimes people are a little, I don't know, antsy, like, oh, buy the book, like, I don't want to tell you. Well, I actually had someone say, well, no, I'm not going to tell you my 3-step framework on air. um and I've only had one person do that in all the years. I was very surprised. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know I was asking something proprietary. So how do you guide people around that, around how much to disclose that's in the book, or about their coaching program practices or something like that? Have you felt that push pull from authors?
Well, first of all, you don't make the interview all about the book, because it's going to be, you open the door to giving too much away. So you make it partly about your story. You make it partly about the audience. You make it partly about what the pain point is. And then you can get into the content of the book. But the simple answer is, the more generous you are, the more people are going to be attracted to you. The more they know you care, the more they know you know what they're going through, the more they know you have information that's going to lead them down the primrose path to the good thing, the good stuff, where they need to go next. So yes, you need to be generous with your information. No, you don't have to give it all away, but you need to find the kernels that are going to make them feel like they're getting incredible value out of you. And if you got that much in this little 1-hour interview, how much more could they get if they're working with you? So it's absolutely imperative that you be authentic, that you be open. The more closed you are, the more you're going to push people away. I give away a ton of information on every interview I do, simply because I want people to know that I care, that I really want them to succeed, and that there's more here that that'll get you to the next level. So.
I completely agree with you. And I often think of these opportunities as a chance to educate my prospects about the bigger problems they have to tackle. Like in my second book, I talk about the awareness that people might have. Like initially, I call it the little p problem awareness, like the problem they know they have, they're willing to admit. So of course you want to address that on air, but then you also want to sort of start to allude to, or really spell out even, that there's this other problem that they hadn't even thought about, and leave people kind of going, huh, I hadn't, oh. And now you're the person who could guide them to a possible solution. You seem like you know what you're talking about. Oh, and you have a lead magnet, like you have a resource to give me. So it's just a really great opportunity. I've never been one to hold back. I'm like you, Jackie. I give a lot of it away because I also have this assumption that my ideal client is not going to just try this on their own and hope things stick to the wall. My ideal client is ready to take action. They're ready to get the right help. They just needed to find out who that help was from. But if people are willing to DIY based on like the few things I say on a podcast, awesome. Try it out. But hopefully you'll keep hearing things from me over time. You'll realize if you need more help, where to find it. Because the information you get in a 1 hour lunch and learn or a 1 hour podcast is not going to change your life. It's probably just the low level stuff that people need to know about. I want to shift gears a little bit on this call because you're one of our founding hub partners. And I was just looking up that you and I talked about this hub thing in February of 2024 when it was still it wasn't really a thing yet. I had set up a Google form in January, in mid-January. I had done maybe about 12 research calls between December and January. And this was because I'd run my first Kindle cross promotion event in November around Black Friday. And then I got a whole bunch of new unexpected business in December. People booking me to do coaching and book launch coaching. And I was like, oh, yes, I want to do more of this. I want to get the right kind of referrals. And I did all these research calls to figure out whether my launch sequence, my focus on reviews was unique, but did it make sense? And did a referral network exist that I could join? And by mid-January, those two answers were, it was unique, and no, it doesn't exist, but can we join yours? So by the time I was talking to you, I was pretty committed, but I was still tinkering. I didn't quite know what it would look like. And I just want to appreciate you for saying yes when I didn't even have a video. I didn't have a website. I had nothing but just a concept. And you've been now involved. You've been coming to our events. You've been meeting lots of people. I just would love to hear some stories about your experience as a hub partner, like what's come of it. And yeah, tell us a little bit about how you've been engaging as a hub partner.
Well, I come to all of the meetings if I'm available because my best partners are what I call book whisperers, people who are engaged somewhere in helping authors either produce their books, write their books, or market their books. And this is a ripe community for me. Everybody here is a potential referral partner. And so I love to hang out here. But even things like, I've been working with Randy Peiser for many, many, many years. We've been good friends. We hang out together, and not just this group, but a couple of others. And but Randy hadn't actually started sending me clients, and it started during this period when we've been on the hub. She really started sending me a series of clients, and I just sent her a nice referral check. And then I'm meeting new people. I've had a couple exploratory meetings with people who have communities that might be willing to send people to me. So that's the new part about this that I like. And then I'm also hearing about other people that, when somebody says to me, well, I really need this, I said, oh, I know somebody for you that would be perfect. I love having this be a part of the community, and I'm loving the fact that I'm in people's faces more. And even somebody that I've been on for years and years and years with on these things finally said to me in our group meeting yesterday for the hub, send me that information again. I think I have somebody for you. So by being in people's faces, it puts me right in their thinking, I've got somebody now. So the more I show up, the more it's going to them to send people to me.
I love that you show up, and I really think showing up is such a big part of the success of this community. There are other online places like Readsy to find just like a list of service providers who work with authors. I find this site really overwhelming, and I've only went there when people had a very specific profile for me to click on and check out. I didn't want this to just be a place people signed up and then forgot about. It really works for people who show up and are engaged because, as you said, a lot of this is just tapping into the people who are hub partners and building better referral networks within the hub community. And then having resources. Your Rolodex has just grown because you now have people who do a wide range of things. I mean, we have people who do it's not a speaker reel, it's a reel for your book. That's the whole thing. A book trailer is what it's called. And I love that that's like not a thing every author is looking for. But if someone was looking for that, I now know two people who do that, and that's kind of cool.
Well, in yesterday's meeting, I found that there's a guy that actually helps you do the actual voice if you're going to record your own book, and make sure that you're able to articulate that properly and emphasize and do all that stuff. I didn't know there was somebody out there that does that.
Yeah.
So, it just keeps enhancing my value to my clients.
One of the things that I thought about when I first started this was that I was looking for people who really focused on getting them to the publishing line, because my role comes after that, right? So initially I was like, okay, my referral partners are going to be people who go writing, editing, publishing, Robbie. But then it was like, oh, well, then who do I refer people to? Oh, marketing. Oh, gosh, there's so many kinds of marketing, and that's how it really became even more well-rounded when I started reaching out to folks like you, because authors coming in have lots of needs. And the ones who are looking further ahead are also looking for help with speaking or like getting on a podcast tour. There's just so much more to the author experience than just the book. There's a social media piece, right? Maybe it's getting awards because you're telling, oh, wait, I can still get awards for my book, even though it came out 6 months ago. Yes, like go for it. So these are things that I think a lot of times going through the directory at bizbookpublishinghub.com, you will become aware as a writer of how much you don't know about this process. Your job right now is to write the book. Don't have to get too hung up on the rest of it, but it's helpful to know that there are people to ask questions to along the way. And to your point about these meetings, I'm all about virtual gatherings. So every single month I host something. One month is just us, the hub partners, like we did yesterday. And then the opposite months are free virtual networking events for writers and authors to meet each other and our hub partners in and out of breakout rooms by topic. Such a great way to find the kind of connections you're looking for in that moment. Love that you're been a part of this, and again, an active community member. And it sounds like it's even reinvigorated the referral chain for you, for people who you've known. There's not always new people. It's like, oh, right, they do that.
And a lot of people think, oh, when it's all about a book launch. Well, it isn't necessarily about a book launch. You can do a radio podcast tour anytime, as long as the content is valuable to the audience. And by the way, we focus on nonfiction just simply because we want to, it's harder for, we can't really get the kind of response we want for fiction. But on nonfiction, the audiences are looking for information that is going to improve their lives, either their businesses or something that they want to do. And as long as you've got a pathway to make people's lives better, then there's an audience for it.
That's brilliant. In a moment, I'm going to actually ask you advice you'd give someone writing a book to help them grow a business, either reiterating a point from earlier or something new you've got. But first, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Jackie, lay it on us. What's the advice you've got for this author who's writing a book to help them grow a business?
Don't go and spend all your money on the book and then think, oh, I don't have any money to market this. You need to budget before you start and make sure that you have the revenue that you can invest in the marketing, or you've just thrown away a lot of money.
Your and time and effort.
Exactly. And your book deserves better. So make sure that you anticipate going in, a budget for the PR that you're going to do, the social media, the outsourcing that you need to do, your bestseller campaigns. Now, you don't have to do all of it. It might be that you pick your spots if you have limitations, but think about how you're going to build a war chest that's going to enable you to really get that book out.
And if you work with service providers that keep asking you the good questions like you do about how is this book serving your business, tell us the next step, tell us the pathway that a reader would go to come into your world, what's the best sort of resource or freebie bonus content that you can offer them on a show or in the book, like that's going to continue to help refine the audience, refine the offer. I love having those conversations. I've actually at first was saying I really want to talk to people when they have their manuscript that's ready to go to the editor. And I've refined that to be I will talk to someone as soon as they're thinking about writing a book. I know they're not ready to hire me because I focus on the launch and the book has to exist for that. But if I can ask them good questions and get them connected to a hub partner who will ask them even better questions and getting them writing the book, then when they come back to me 6 months later, I know I can do an even better job helping them build the right kind of launch team because they'll know who their prospects are. They'll know who their referral partners are. It'll just all be matched up for the offer they already have. Sometimes I find myself scrambling, and I'm sure you've had this too. They're like, I wrote a book. I want to do some marketing for it. To who? Like you're like, okay, you wrote a book because you felt called to do it, but now let's help. Now let's spend some time helping you figure out where the audience is for it. I find that to be harder than if they were just guided along the way to get the best outcome.
Agreed.
With all of that, Jackie, how can people find you and follow your work?
So please come and visit me at Conscious Media Relations. And you can always reach out to me at Jackie at Conscious Media Relations. And can I drop a little free gift? Okay, so if you would like an ebook called 20 Factors That Tip Your Scales in Your Favor to Get on a Podcast, go to consciousmediarelations.com/podcast. And that will give you a good idea of how you can position yourself for more podcasts.
Brilliant. We'll put all those links in the show notes at thebizbookpublishinghub.com. You'll find more than 50 hub partners, including Jackie, and all the services she provides. You'll find the invitation to join our free virtual networking events for writers and authors, and all the show notes for these amazing shows with our experts and our author panels. Again, the link is bizbookpublishinghub.com. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us.
It was a joy. Thank you, Robbie.